So we thought the coaching carousel and the college football was crazy at the end of the regular season, right? Well, the transfer portal may be giving it a run for its money. Guys like quarterbacks Quinn, Spencer Rattler, Keaton Slovis, Bo Nix, all entering their names into the transfer portal. Quinn Ewers back to where he originally committed, Texas. Spencer Rattler jumping from Oklahoma to South Carolina, and a lot of names still trying to figure out exactly where they will end up next. Let's welcome in our quarterbacks, Danny, Kanell, Brady, Quinn, and talk about some of the movements we've seen so far when it comes to the transfer portal. And let's start, guys, with Spencer Rattler to South Carolina. Danny, what was your reaction when you saw this?
It was a surprise. I think it speaks volumes to the job that Shane Beamer has done, kind of invigorating some life into a South Carolina program, which had kind of been floundering the last few years. And then all of a sudden they have a couple surprising wins this season. They get a couple signature wins, and then you parlay that into an offseason where you bring in a quarterback who I know things fell apart this year, and that was because Caleb Williams came in. But 2 seasons ago, this was one of the players who had one of the better seasons in the country. So it'll be really fun to watch and see what Spencer Rattler does in the SEC, going to the biggest conference out there to see how he stacks up against the big boys. I think this is a big coup for Shane Beamer. I do question Spencer Rattler. He's a polarizing quarterback. He's cocky, he's brash, but hey, he can play the game. He can infuse a little life into a system. And if you remember, this is a program that was playing a graduate assistant who they took off the headset, gave him the helmet, and said go, and Zeb Nolan. So they need a quarterback, and they feel like they found one in Spencer Rattler.
Let's not forget, too, this is all about familiarity. Shane Beamer was previously at Oklahoma as their assistant head coach and tight ends coach. Why is that significant? Because Spencer Rattler's not going alone. Austin Stogner, the tight end, the pass-catching tight end there at Oklahoma, he's also transferred to South Carolina. So I think this is a huge hit for Beamer as they're trying to build back that program. But it's just another example of the craziness that is college football, the transfer portal, considering that we were talking about Spencer Rattler a year ago, the Heisman favorite, potentially the #1 overall draft pick, and now he's playing his games in Columbia, South Carolina, starting next season, trying to make a case to build back up. Look, his arm talent is undeniable. He's one of the more talented passers in college football. It just comes down to who is a better fit for that Oklahoma team this year, and how could you help raise the level of play everyone else had around him. It wasn't like statistically he was playing poorly. Yes, some turnovers, but with the lack of a rushing attack at Oklahoma, the lack of protection early on, Caleb Williams is just a better fit. I think Spencer Rattler can still be incredibly successful at South Carolina, especially when he already has a familiar target to go along with him. But the other thing I just point out is, when you're a college quarterback, because we've got national, or at least the early signing day coming up tomorrow, if coming out of high school, you would be looking at like the guys in your class, maybe the guys ahead of you who you're going to go compete with. Now none of that matters. I mean, you go sign at a place and you might be somewhere else if there's a better opportunity, depending on how things work out with whoever you sign, or you could potentially be having to compete with a guy who's transferring into your spot due to the transfer portal. So this entire college football offseason, if you will, has been turned upside down with the transfer portal, in particular quarterback play. And the last thing I'll just say is the backup quarterback. A lot of teams are going to feel like they've either got a lot of inexperience behind their starter or some big-time concerns about what that's going to look like if their starter gets hurt with so many guys out there transferring.
Somebody who's been caught up in that, we haven't seen him play yet, Quinn Ewers, who left high school early, was committed to Texas, decommitted, went to Ohio State, a very crowded quarterback room there. He is now at Texas, back where he started. Brady, what do you think about Quinn Ewers to Texas?
Well, I think it makes a lot of sense for him to be closer to home. I don't ever know that he was realistically looking to play at Ohio State anytime soon with C.J. Stroud being there, Kyle McCoy, and Jack Miller. I mean, Ohio State felt really good about their quarterback room before Quinn Ewers even decommitted. And once he reclassified, decided to come to Ohio State, it actually took that entire coaching staff by surprise and probably not something that they ultimately wanted. So the writing was on the wall, I think, when he made that decision. But the fact that he's going down to Texas with an offensive mind like Steve Sarkisian, I think should give a lot of optimism to Longhorn fans. And especially when you've got a guy like Xavier Worthy to throw to, or burst on the scene this year at the wide receiver position, who's about as explosive as you'll find. Bijan Robinson in the backfield. Jordan Whittington, too, as well, the quick twitchy, who could also create some big plays. So there's a lot of upside there. And given the fact that no one really wrestled over that starting quarterback spot this year for the Longhorns, I think Quinn Ewers may very well win the job.
And let's be honest, he went to secure the bag, right? That's what he did in Columbus. He went for the quick payday, and I don't blame him. That's the new territory of what you can do now. I'm a little bit concerned about him from this standpoint. He's only played a year and a half of high school football, and his last full season was his sophomore year, and then his junior season was cut short. Then he opted out or reclassified for his senior year. So this is somebody who's played a very small body of work of football, of real live snaps. I think he's played 600 snaps, which is a lot, but still, it's only a year and a half. And now he's coming back. He's already gotten one payday. He's coming back now, and the rumors around there, who knows if they're accurate, but they're definitely in the seven figures. I mean, the numbers they're throwing around are $4 million, and he's going to be the savior to come home for Sark in a program which was a mess this year. It is going to be a massive pressure cooker for Steve Sarkisian and for Quinn Ewers, because I'm at this point, he almost has to start, because if you don't start him, guess what? He probably goes somewhere else and transfers again. So I think there's going to be a tremendous amount of pressure on Quinn Ewers at Texas. I'm with Brady. I do think he probably does start. But like the best film I've seen him is what we were watching just coming in here, some highlights. He's always in shorts and a T-shirt at some of these off-season, 7-on-7 camps or quarterback combines or Elite 11s, whatever they are. And he looks good, but it's a big step up to college football, and there's not going to be a player with more eyeballs on him than Quinn Ewers, as so far the probably highest paid quarterback we've seen in the NIL era.
We have now former Indiana quarterback Michael Penix Jr. headed Washington. Their new head coach there, Kalen DeBoer. Brady, you talked about familiarity. There is some here. DeBoer was Penix offensive coordinator back in 2019. How do you like this move?
Well, I love it for Michael Penix. I mean, look, I think 2 years ago you saw what he was capable of. Playing for Indiana, a bunch of different guys too, stepping up on the outside for him. Ty Fragfogel, as well as Peyton Hendershot, their tight end. Everyone kind of helping out. This year, it was anything but. Had obviously a hard time staying healthy as well. And so, I think familiarity is the biggest thing if you're going to make this sort of change where everything else in your life is changing as far as where you live, where you're going to eat, what your classrooms look like too while you're on a college campus. I mean, those are all hard adjustments for young men, young people to deal with in general. So at least he's going to have familiarity with an offensive system. And it wasn't like Dylan Moses really ran away with this job this season for Washington. In fact, you can make the case. That's probably one of the reasons why I think Husky fans were so frustrated and why Jimmy Lake was so frustrated is no longer there anymore, amongst other things, is the fact that, they were not where they needed to be offensively, at least not when Chris Peterson was there in that transition to Jimmy Lake. So it should be a good fit, at least from that standpoint, schematically, but he's got to look like the player we saw a couple years ago, not this past season.
Yeah, I actually covered Penix his freshman year when Kalen DeBoer was there as the offensive coordinator. And I remember DeBoer was really high on him, saying, hey, we got this young kid. He's a freshman. He's got a lot of potential. Wait till you see him throw. And then he got in the game that I was calling, and he did. The ball jumped off his arm, and he came in and played pretty well for somebody with very little experience. Now he's played a lot of football, but unfortunately, as Brady mentioned, he has had some injury issues. That'll be, priority number one is to get him healthy and then keep him healthy. And this Washington team, I do think this is a program that should be just below, Oregon, Utah, and maybe even on level par with those two teams when they're healthy. Now they've had to make the coaching change, but there still is some talent on the defensive side of that roster, and that was Jimmy Lake's specialty. The offense was a disaster. John Donovan was one of the worst offensive coordinators in the country. It was a mess. Now you bring DeBoer in there, who's an offensive mind, and you bring a quarterback in there who should be able to pick up that system fairly quick, having already played in it. And then you got a Sam Heward, who's son of Damon Heward, who's got was a 4 or 5 star recruit. So there'll be a competition here, but to have somebody who's familiar with that system will definitely be an asset for the Huskies.
So those guys have some landing spots. Alrighty, let's talk about some guys who don't, including Bo Nix, leaving Auburn after starting there for 3 years. Danny, where do you think he could land? But also, what does this mean for Auburn?
Well, I think for Auburn, I bet Auburn fans are torn because watching Bo Nix was a roller coaster. He was up, he was down, and you never saw just a steady progression of him getting better at the quarterback position. And yet he put his body on the line. He's one of the tougher quarterbacks we've seen in college football. He just couldn't get it right consistently. And I think you're going to get somebody who's a great locker room leader. His dad played obviously for a long time at Auburn. I'm sure this was a tough decision they had to make. And maybe it just wasn't a good fit. Maybe he saw the writing on the wall with TJ Finley saying, hey, I'm going to go try my place somewhere else. I do think he's the type of quarterback that needs players around him. I don't think he's going to elevate a program. I would almost like to see him at a Cincinnati, like a really top-tier American program or a Mountain West program where he would have opportunity to really play with elevated talent around him so that he could possibly, just be more of a game manager, not have so much pressure on him. Maybe UCF. Maybe there's a reunion with Gus Malzahn. I don't know how that ended when Gus Malzahn was fired, but that obviously was the reason that he chose to go to Auburn. So maybe there's a reunion there. Gus had taken some players before, and Big Cat Bryant with him to Orlando. So he'll find a place for him. A player with that many snaps and has played that much football, he'll be an instant leader in the locker room, which is one of those intangibles I don't think we talk about enough.
No, I don't think that's going to be an issue for him, is transitioning to whatever team that is and winning over that locker room as a leader. But I think the big key for him is wherever he goes next, it really needs to come down to the system that he fits into. He's thrown over 1,000 passes in his college football career. He's passed for over 7,000 yards. And I think we've seen enough to now know kind of what he is and what he's not. And one of the things that he really needs to improve on is playing from the pocket. And so he either needs to go to a system that is going to help him move him out of the pocket, incorporate some of that athleticism and his running ability, or he needs to find someone who's been known or renowned as a quarterback developer, because we just hadn't seen that jump like you hope to see after what was a great freshman campaign at Auburn, and then kind of stumbled ever since. So the bottom line is Bo Nix has all the ability in the world. It's just about development, putting it all together, but finding the right system and the right fit wherever he goes next.
Guys, someone we heard a lot about this season was Zach Calzada, who was starting for the Aggies, started 10 games for them, but that's because Haynes King, who was named the starter at the beginning of the season, was injured. So King is expected to return. The Aggies also have a lot of good prospects coming in. They've done some great recruiting there. So Zach Calzada entering the transfer portal. Brady, the Aggies look like they're going to be okay. What about Calzada?
Yeah, I would actually go along with what Danny just said in regards to talking about Bo Nix. Like, I think Calzada will be better suited probably going to a team that kind of could help manage some things out around him. I mean, they had some solid talent, obviously a rushing attack, a decent offensive line, and one of the best tight ends in the country in Weidermeyer, and he still struggled to find consistently throwing the football. So, if you're looking at all the guys who are out there in this transfer portal at the quarterback position, you hate to say this about a young man like this, but he'd probably be at the lower end of the list, even though he's got one of the best wins of the season, being able to help A&M upset what is the number one team in the country now in Alabama. So when you talk about some of the other guys, whether it's Bo Nix, Keaton Slovis, who we haven't talked about yet, those guys have played more. I think you know more what you're getting from them at this point. And that's why I think Zach Calzada might end up falling to a team that really just is going to provide him the opportunity right away to continue to build, grow, and get better and better as a quarterback.
Yeah, I think he sees the writing on the wall with Haynes King coming back. He'd already lost that competition and then was, after Haynes King went down, he's given this opportunity. And I'm sure he saw the writing on the wall, so he's looking for out. You mentioned the Alabama game, the win they had in College Station. That game, he looked like Aaron Rodgers. Like, I haven't seen a quarterback, look pedestrian for most of the year like a game manager. And all of a sudden, he's throwing guys open, he's getting hit, he's putting balls right in windows on third down. Looks incredible. And I'm sure that would excite a lot of programs out there if you look at that one game. But the reality is, over the course of the season, he does have some limitations. So I think there would be opportunity for him out there. I just don't think, like Brady said, it's going to be the top of the list that gets, that he's going to get those calls. But there will absolutely be a Power 5 program that will let Zach Calzada come in there. And again, a system that is going to look for somebody who's going to manage the game, is going to give you good decisions, and just smart quarterback. Jimbo Fisher puts a lot on his quarterback. So you're going to get a high IQ guy who can handle a lot on his plate, and that somebody out there will find some value in that.
Brady, a name you mentioned, Keaton Slovis. We haven't talked about him yet. Same as Zach Calzada, Bo Nix. We've seen a lot from this guy. Didn't finish as the starter there at USC. Some inconsistent play. Also a couple injuries that he's been dealing with, though. But he is now in the transfer portal. Of course, USC now has Lincoln Riley there, who is a great recruiter as well. Keaton Slovis, where do we see him going?
I mean, it's tough to tell at this point. He's from Arizona, so you thought maybe there's a chance he'd go somewhere like ASU or University of Arizona. But I think University of Arizona, he'd be in a tough spot given where that team is at right now, struggling to find ways of even just being competitive. And then you look at Arizona State, but Jaden Daniels is coming back. And those are two very different styles of quarterbacks. So the running was on the wall once I think Jackson Dart came in and showcased his ability. I think you see more of the upside of what he's going to bring. And I think Keaton Slovis now is looking for that next opportunity. So does he look for something closer to an air raid system, which is what he ran essentially with Graham Harrell during his time at USC? Or is he looking for more of a traditional style offense? It's going to be interesting to see where he ends up going. I actually think he's low-key probably one of the better quarterbacks that could go in and provide an immediate impact as far as just his overall football IQ, decision-making, arm talent. I mean, he can get the job done. He just needs to be in the right place at the right time. It's for someone to give him that opportunity to stay healthy. So I'm very high on Keaton Slovis. And then this is a huge year for him because I think he can impress a lot of people too at the next level, depending on where he goes and what this upcoming season looks like.
Yeah, and these quarterbacks, they're all tempted by what has transpired with a Joe Burrow, who's, okay, doesn't play at Ohio State, then he gets to LSU, and of course the rest is history. And after 2 years, he gets to be the #1 overall pick. So everyone's looking for opportunity, but so many times it fit. I mean, look at all the guys Joe Burrow had him around there, and Justin Jefferson, and the wealth of NFL, Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the backfield. I mean, he had NFL talent all over the field with him. That to me is where Keaton Slovis, if he gets into a spot like that, I could see him being a massive riser up the draft boards where he could make a ton of money if he makes the right decision. I do think it's curious, though, that Lincoln Riley's an offensive mind, a quarterback guy, and that he didn't want to wait around and possibly compete with Jackson Dart, who he's seen. Jackson Dart obviously played really well when he came in there. I also wonder if he's reading the tea leaves and watching what Caleb Williams is going to do. And I'm sure Amanda's watching that, too, as every Oklahoma Sooner fan who's hoping that Caleb Williams stays home there in Norman and stays at Oklahoma. But there's a lot of speculation maybe he follows ship at Lincoln Riley and goes out to the West Coast as well. So we're just getting started with a lot of this movement. I also think it's key to note, too, you can enter the transfer portal and you can stay. You just might want to shop around and see what's out there. And some of these guys, I think Zach Calzada might be a guy. Like if he doesn't get the right spot, maybe he stays and says, you know what, I'd rather be a backup at Texas A&M. Maybe I get to play again and I can compete for an SEC championship rather than go to some of these schools that are out there. So just because you're in the portal doesn't mean you leave. You could stay at the same school, but these are some really good options for these players.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.